Welcome to Omni View, episode 104 for July 6th, 2026. Balanced news perspectives, new week, fresh perspectives. Let's see what happened over the weekend and what's developing today. Russia's intensified strikes on Kyiv have killed 18 and exposed Ukraine's shrinking stock of interceptor missiles, directly affecting civilian safety and NATO planning. Ukrainian President Zelensky stated that Sunday's Russian attack involved 68 missiles and 351 drones. The strikes killed 18 people in the Kyiv region and injured 117. Zelensky called for stronger decisions at the upcoming NATO summit in Ankara. Both sides accept that the strikes took place and produced civilian casualties. Ukrainian officials framed the attack as proof that additional air defense systems must reach the country immediately. Russian statements describe the operation as a direct reply to Ukrainian moves. NATO members split on delivery speed, with some stressing existing commitments and others warning against steps that could widen the conflict. The question worth considering is what specific systems Ukrainian reports identify as shortest in supply. Shifting now to developments in Turkey. Turkish authorities arrested more than 200 people in raids across Ankara last month and jailed a comedian. A cruise ship carrying LGBTQ+ passengers was turned away, and demonstrations were banned until 10 July. Human Rights Watch described the measures as evidence of restrictions on speech and assembly. Everything turns on whether the steps qualify as proportionate security preparations. Turkish officials link the actions to the requirements of hosting the NATO gathering. Human Rights Watch and opposition voices argue the arrests and protest ban reach beyond security needs and limit basic freedoms. International observers note the timing aligns with the summit opening on Tuesday. The question worth considering is which groups were primarily targeted in the raids. Next, a change in medication access in the United Kingdom. The once-daily pill version of the Wegovy treatment can now be bought privately in UK pharmacies. It comes from the same manufacturer as the injectable form already in use. Health providers note the pill offers an oral alternative for patients who prefer not to use injections. Pharmacies highlight that availability remains limited to private purchase rather than NHS supply. Patient groups point to ongoing questions about long-term access and cost. The manufacturer presents the pill as expanding treatment options while regulators have cleared it for private sale. The question worth considering is what the current price range is for the private prescription. Moving to a filing in the United States markets. C-Square Incorporated, supported by Brookfield Corporation, filed to raise as much as $1.35 billion through an initial public offering. The company positions the listing as a route to fund expansion of data center capacity. Investors view the move as part of broader demand growth tied to computing needs. Market analysts note the scale of the raise relative to recent tech offerings. Brookfield's involvement is presented as backing for infrastructure growth. The question worth considering is what portion of the funds is earmarked for new facilities. Turning to findings from a longitudinal health study. Research from Mount Sinai found that babies exposed to higher levels of PM 2.5 pollution in their first year showed greater difficulty with impulse control later in childhood. The study identifies this pathway as one possible route to higher obesity risk. Researchers emphasize the novelty of connecting pollution directly to impulse control measures in longitudinal data. Public health advocates argue the findings support tighter air quality standards in urban areas. Industry representatives have previously questioned the strength of causal links in similar studies. The question worth considering is what sample size and age range were tracked in the study. The private equity stakeholder project documented more than 500 joint ventures between private-equity firms and nonprofit healthcare providers, including rural hospitals and hospice services. The group called for increased government oversight of these arrangements. The project argues these arrangements can lead to profit extraction and reduced care quality. Healthcare systems involved describe the partnerships as necessary for financial sustainability. Regulators have so far taken varied approaches to reviewing such deals. The report compiles publicly available transaction data but does not include case-by-case outcome studies. The question worth considering is which types of facilities appear most frequently in the documented ventures. Ondas Incorporated agreed to purchase Design Technologies for $875.8 million in cash and stock. The transaction would create a combined platform focused on autonomous defense technology. Ondas frames the acquisition as expanding its capabilities across autonomous systems. DZYIN shareholders receive a mix of cash and equity in the larger entity. Defense sector investors see the move as consolidation within a growing segment. The deal structure includes both cash and stock components, and completion remains subject to regulatory review. The question worth considering is what specific DZYAIE products or contracts are highlighted in the announcement. Now to a development in the Middle East. Hamas officials confirmed the organization will dissolve its governing structures in Gaza. The step was agreed earlier this year as part of a peace arrangement with Israel. Hamas presents the move as fulfillment of the negotiated agreement. Israeli officials have described it as a required condition for further implementation. International mediators note the decision removes one administrative layer from the territory. The question worth considering is what new administrative body is expected to replace the current structure. Meanwhile, an immigration case in the United Kingdom draws attention under new rules. Mark Nelson, 46, who arrived in the UK in 2000, received a 4-year sentence in 2017 for growing cannabis after business difficulties. He has 5 British children and a British partner and has not reoffended. Immigration authorities apply the new rules to individuals with criminal convictions regardless of time spent in the country. Family and community supporters argue long-term residence and family ties should carry greater weight. Legal observers note the case tests how the legislation balances prior offending against subsequent conduct. The question worth considering is what appeal options remain available under the updated rules. Paris Deputy Mayor Audrey Pulvar and other officials are examining increased use of air conditioning as heat events become more frequent. The discussion contrasts with long-standing preferences for natural ventilation in many European buildings. City planners cite rising temperatures and public health data as reasons to reconsider past limits on cooling systems. Building owners and heritage groups note concerns about energy use and changes to historic architecture. Energy analysts point to grid capacity questions that would accompany wider adoption. European building codes have historically prioritized passive cooling, while recent summers have prompted pilot programs in several capitals. The question worth considering is what energy efficiency standards are proposed alongside any expansion. A style column states that some summer dress lengths can appear aging and recommends specific proportions and pattern choices for women over 50. The writer presents the guidance as practical advice for remaining comfortable and flattering in warm weather. Readers have responded with both agreement on proportion rules and pushback against prescriptive fashion norms. Retailers note ongoing demand for versatile warm weather options. The column focuses on visual balance and fabric drape rather than strict rules and acknowledges that individual body shapes vary. The question worth considering is what length range is described as most versatile. Erica Kirk is scheduled to attend proceedings against Tyler Robinson, the man charged with killing her husband Charlie. Prosecutors will begin presenting their case. Court officials describe the hearing as a standard step in the prosecution process. Family members have expressed a desire for the facts to be fully aired. Defense counsel will have the opportunity to respond during the proceedings. The case involves a high-profile alleged assassination, and no trial date has been set in the current reports. The question worth considering is what charges beyond murder are included in the indictment. Now, to really understand this story about NATO and air defense requests, there is a process most coverage leaves out. Requests move through a multi-step staffing process involving national military assessments, industrial production schedules, and classified intelligence sharing before any public announcement. Each member's permanent representative consults with its own defense ministry and with NATO's integrated command structure. Shortages reported by one frontline state are weighed against the readiness levels of every other member. When headlines state that NATO pledged more missiles, readers can check whether the pledge refers to immediate transfers from existing stockpiles, future production contracts, or simply a political statement of intent. Next time coverage mentions rapid alliance action, ask which national inventories were actually drawn down, what production lead times were accepted, and which members absorbed the largest share of the commitment. Before we go, tomorrow watch for updates on the NATO summit proceedings in Ankara as member positions on air defense deliveries take clearer shape. That's Omni View. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the Omni View Summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets. Each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Models and Agents, your daily briefing on AI models and agents. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.